Hey, this is Mike Diercksen from Proactive, and you're listening to the Building Byte podcast. Tune in as we spotlight our guests, Cutler Knupp, Managing Director of Dysruptek, and Rose Hall, Vice President and Head of Construction Innovation at AXA XL. Our episode today is focused on demystifying advanced technologies. For more information on this episode and others, please check out the Building Byte at www.buildwithproactive.com.
Welcome to the Building Byte podcast, a podcast for construction, contractors, owners, and insurance professionals where you can hear from the experts about key topics to help keep your business successful. I'm Chris Epps, a Senior Director with Proactive, and I'm joined here with my co-host Mike Diercksen, our Manager of Marketing and Business Development. Our guests today are two dynamic thought leaders within the construction insurance space, Cutler Knupp, Managing Director of Dysruptek, and Rose Hall, VP and Head of Construction Innovation at AXA XL, and co-founder of the AXA XL construction ecosystem. Our topic today is a preview for those heading to ERMI this November, Demystifying Advanced Technologies. Rose, how are you this afternoon?
Doing great. Thanks, Chris. Happy to be here.
Cutler, how about yourself?
Doing well. Thanks, Chris. Happy to be here.
Oh, likewise. We're happy to have you guys. Mike, how about you? How are you this afternoon?
Doing good, Chris. Really excited to get on with Cutler and Rose and get a sneak peek before ERMI starts up. But speaking of which, before we do that, wanted to quickly ask Rose if she could briefly introduce herself. I know we've had her on the show before, but for our new audience, new listeners, Rose, if you could give us a little bit about your background and maybe your role at AXA XL.
Sure thing, Michael. I'm Rose Hall. I'm the Head of Construction Innovation here at AXA XL. And speaking of ERMI, I've been going to ERMI for I think more years than I'd like to admit. I've been in the industry, but I came from construction and civil engineering up through the ranks at Turner Construction. And my last few years at Turner were in risk management. So that's where I got to connect operations with risk. I've been at AXA XL for almost 8 years. I started in risk engineering, so I had a book of clients. Haskell was one of them, actually. And the job was to help translate risk management into the operations of our customers, help them better manage their risk, and as we're their partners in risk, since we write their insurance products. Very soon thereafter, I started to think about how we could use innovation and technology to help contractors elevate their risk management protocols. So my role as Head of Construction Innovation was created specifically to bolster our customers' ability to manage risk, not just in their processes, but also through innovation and technology. We know that when we help our contractors innovate and modernize their businesses and learn how to manage risk with new tools, that they will become more profitable, be able to grow in the direction that they want to grow in, and be less risky for both themselves and for us. So it's a mutually beneficial partnership endeavor I have here in the construction ecosystem that we built in my role as Head of Construction Innovation.
That's excellent. Thank you, Rose. And Cutler, I wonder if you could give us a brief rundown of the same, how you got to be the Managing Director of Dysruptek and that partnership with Haskell.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to echo Rose's intro, she's awesome and kind of thrilled to be in company such as yourself, and really helping to drive things forward here. So but yeah, Cutler Knupp here, Director of Dysruptek. We are the venture arm of the Haskell company. So we are design build general contractor, established back in 1965, one of the pioneers of the integrated design build model. So that's a bulk of the projects that the core business does. I joined Haskell back in 2018 to specifically work to stand up Dysruptek, and kind of the mission of what we're doing is simple. It's really to innovate ourselves before we're forced to do it from market conditions. And so, we're out here looking at the bleeding edge of what's taking place as far as innovation and technology in our space. And there's obviously a lot happening. Y'all are very aware of it, but dedicated time, resource to pilot this technology, remove barriers, enable our folks to try new means and methods, and essentially do detailed kind of analysis of what the results are and the value of that, and then make decisions on whether there's an opportunity to invest to continue to support those businesses in market, sign enterprise contracts with those, get them integrated to the business, et cetera. So it's kind of the core small team, but really dedicated, focused mission. So a little over 4 years into it now, and it's a lot of exciting things still taking place, and it's still very early, I feel, too. But yes, it's a little bit about Haskell and Dysruptek.
Yeah, no, it's we've had the pleasure of having Hamza Shambari on the show before, which is another great listen for our audience out there. But definitely glad to have you on here, Cutler, and really to dive into our topic today.
Yeah, and echoing what Mike said, it's great to have you both on the show today. And as we mentioned at the top of the show, we're looking to demystify advanced technologies within the construction industry. And Rose, I guess I'd start with you, maybe to kick things off. As a carrier, what is it you're seeing or maybe perhaps not seeing from GCs when it comes to technology and innovation that calls for this type conversation?
Yeah, we sit in a privileged position where we get to see the cross-section of the ENR top 400 in a sort of bird's eye view, and we get to see the cross-section of their practices and what they're adopting. We even created a tech adoption maturity index called our TAMI, where we can evaluate from a quantitative perspective what our customers are doing with respect to technology. Tech is so big right now in construction. The biggest problem 10 years ago was there was no tech. Now the biggest problem is there's so much, and contractors, even the innovative ones who are trying to adopt technology, are overwhelmed with the options and also the use cases. Where do they begin? So our TAMI helps to call that down to a dull roar. And what we've learned from that is that I would have said to you 3 or 4 years ago that technology was in its infancy in construction. Now it is blossoming, and it's fantastic. Some of the most sophisticated contractors like Haskell even have their own venture arms like Dysruptek. I think it's really outstanding. But what this session is about, demystifying advanced technology, is in the last few years, contractors have adopted some of the low-hanging fruit. They've been using bidding and estimating softwares, pre-qualification softwares, project management softwares for years. Those are table stakes technologies. Lately, they've been adopting some of the more easily, let's call it, digested technologies like imagery and telematics and some water mitigation technologies. But there's still this bucket of tech that's considered kind of advanced and a little bit futuristic, which folks I feel are having a tough time thinking about dipping a toe in. Augmented reality, virtual reality, digital twin, robotics. These are some of the ones that still seem a little fringy. And, a few years ago, we were trying to encourage contractors to adopt, let's say, 360 imagery with computer vision and photogrammetry. And now they have, and it's prevalent across the industry. And so if you guys know me, I think this is part of the reason you keep asking me back, is that I am kind of a disruptor and always looking toward the future. So a few years ago when we started talking about imagery, and now imagery is here, I'm like, all right, what's next? What's next is AR and VR and robotics and some of these other things that are kind of hard to wrap your head around. So the whole purpose of this session at ERMI is going to be to talk about who's using these. They're not just fringe. They're not just for the future. They're here. They're here now, and they're great opportunities. I'm excited to hear from Cutler about what they've done in virtual reality for safety training. There's some real value in some of these advanced technologies. So we want to take the scary part out of it and make it human and make it more tangible so that it's more interesting and starts to get adopted. And in a couple years, I hope we're talking about those things being table stakes.
Yeah, we certainly tend to agree in terms of innovation and also the industry, I guess, having that reputation as being slow to adopt, right? But so I guess without maybe giving away too much of your ERMI presentation and the secret sauce, how do you and your innovation team, what are you doing to sort of overcome that stigma of being an industry that's slow to adopt and really getting on the roller coaster of all of this emerging technology all at once?
Yeah, for sure. There's a couple elements to it. I think you first have to embrace where you are, right? So it is what it is. We didn't get here overnight. We're not gonna, find ourselves out of this overnight either. But at the same time, understanding that the opportunity is now, and you have to embrace what is the future. And as Rose mentioned, you can start to see technologies that were not widely used 10, 15 years ago that now is the table stakes, as you mentioned, Rose. I like that phrase. And then now you're seeing things even as of 10 years ago that weren't commonplace, and now you're more applicable to see a tablet on, or several, as far as on every job site you go to. From a mobile perspective, folks are getting more comfortable around wearables, et cetera. So all those are really starting to kind of more and more penetrate what is the industry. And then, as Rose is kind of alluding to, and some of what the session will be about at ERMI, is really when you're leaning into tech like AR, VR, that's been out for some time. It's not necessarily new technology, but there's still not a lot of necessarily exposure to the applications in it. And it still seems pretty far-fetched to a lot of folks that maybe haven't had the opportunity to put on a headset and walk through the metaverse or, play in any sort of video game in a VR setting, unless your kids maybe are into it or something like that, or that's just kind of a side hobby for you. But the cost of a lot of this technology has come down significantly, so it's much more feasible at scale now. The adoption is becoming more and more accepted, especially as we have younger folks continuing to join the workforce. Things along those lines that are really kind of building up to a critical mass of saying, the opportunity is right. But again, the more and more we can get out some of these use cases, continue to keep validating, working through the problem sets with these startups, trying to solve these really difficult problems with us, I think that the better off we're going to be. So, when we're looking at solutions, when we first got rolling, it was what from our lens is the lowest hanging fruit that we can attack. And then, after going through that exercise with our project teams, it quickly kind of reversed from this pushing these emerging solutions on our projects to being pulled into them. And so as soon as they realize there's advocates and allies to help us kind of start exploring what can be done, they're now embracing and coming to us with their problems, which are a lot of times much more embedded and aligned. So then, it's our job to really kind of position what we're seeing in the market and find the right fit and kind of help for the handholding, not only just for the startups, but also for our project teams to become more and more comfortable and proficient in integrating some of this with our workflows.
Yeah, Cutler, sorry, Rose.
No, I was just going to add to that and speak to something Chris said about, construction being slow to adopt. And we've heard this for so long, and I really want to change this narrative because that was true. But now we're adopting so fast that I would like for us, instead of to be saying that construction is slow to adopt, I would like for us to kind of break the mold in how fast we adopt, right? So yes, it's taken us a long time to get to a place where we are starting to adopt, but look how fast we're doing it. We're getting there really, really quickly. So while a lot of other industries have taken initiative over the last 10, 20 years to kind of ramp that up slowly, and they're at this place, we took a while to start, but then we've ramped up really fast. I mean, just in the last, wouldn't you agree, Cutler? Just in the last few years, the amount of adoption we've seen has gone from 0 to 60 very, very quickly. So I want us to, if we're going to be slow to get to the table, I want us to be the first ones to finish, kind of thing.
Yeah, I like that, and I definitely think you're right on that, and we're witnessing that right now, right? And there's almost to the point to where I hope we can find a way to manage that, because it is overwhelming times to really kind of sift through the amount of vendors in the market that are trying to attack the challenges that we're facing on a regular basis. But I agree, Rose, and I think the retail transformation that took place during their digital transformation, it was pretty clear the writing was on the wall, but that really took a lot of time. That took people getting comfortable with here's my Amazon Prime membership, et cetera. Outside of the whole COVID, now everything's going to be delivered to my door next day ramp. I mean, that was a long time period that took place. Looking back, it doesn't feel like it was that long, but there was a 7-10 year cycle there. But I agree that this is very much, I think, even more condensed than what we're seeing today, and how this is going to kind of really revolutionize. And then when you see the entire supply chain of a construction project being involved in it and really leaning in, I think that that's even more exciting, because it's no longer just the isolated folks in the value chain just kind of pushing their own rock up the hill, but now you're starting to see a lot of that alignment. An example of that is obviously Rose and AXA being on this, and some of the stuff that we're collectively working on and they're doing to help contractors understand the value, and they're leaning into how they can do things to continue to incentivize contractors to embrace and lean into technology, because it will benefit everyone in that equation. And we're seeing this with our trade partners. We're seeing this with owners as they become more savvy and aware of how they can have more visibility in their projects and have a more collaborative relationship through the entire design build cycle, all the way down to operations. So it's really cool seeing all those things kind of take place. And I think that that's again why it is moving so fast now, is because everybody's sort of jumped on the train. Now it's just, again, making sense of it all. When you start getting a little bit more advanced is still where some challenges await. But
right, there's certainly more adoption, as we mentioned, but definitely getting the right adoption, right? You want to also, as Rosie said at the beginning, the low-hanging fruit is there, right? We want to get to the scarier stuff, and it shouldn't be scary. I guess the better part of this is if you really take the time to understand it, it's not scary. So that brings me to something that we talked about last time we all connected. Cutler, you have the Hero platform over at Dysruptek. Could you walk us through kind of what that is and that visual reality that you guys are helping to create?
Yeah, absolutely. So Hamza Shambari, who you had on one of your last podcasts, really key member of our team here, and this kind of spawned one of his kind of core brainchilds. But the idea was saying, look, we are doing everything we can to give our folks the best training possible, but we're prepping them for things that will take place that hopefully will never take place. But if they do, there's no way to really expose them to that until it's actually happening. So you obviously want them to be aware of it, but the odds that they will see it are very slim. And then if they do, this could be a situation that ideally, hopefully, they will be able to recognize from that one training that you did when you first started onboarding, things like that. We obviously do continuing education, but what HERO is really focused on stands for Hazard Elimination Risk Oversight. And so the idea is saying, how can you expose someone to hazards on a job site that they will see without actually having to put them in harm's way to witness that or experience that hazard, right? And so we started kind of thinking through what was a good opportunity to do that. You know, video is a decent medium, but doesn't really have that interactive feel. Obviously, just taking a standard, 2D test or, reading from a pamphlet or some training materials isn't really effective either. Enter virtual reality and saying, okay, so now the technology is there to where we already do detailed models of our projects in a virtual setting. So can we translate that into a virtual setting that we can immerse someone in through a virtual experience using VR? And so enter Hero, essentially that's what it is, right? We took one of our job sites and we have taken the most common hazards that folks will see, randomize them accordingly, and we put them through simulation to say, this is a Haskell job, this is a Haskell project that will look very familiar to you. You are essentially to walk the site and identify as many hazards as possible. And the feedback that we got when we first got the program going was overwhelmingly positive. And we had to kind of sit back as a team and be like, well, is this just because this is our people like telling us what we want to hear? And they're like, they think this is cool and this is great. So obviously it's like, we're all cheering for the same team here. So, but we're like, let's get down to the meat of it. And so how effective really is it? So we took our program out and we worked with Texas A&M to do some peer-reviewed case study about the effectiveness of the retention and the ability to recognize hazards with going through Hero without it, with and without it, right? And the results came back even better than we anticipated. So again, it shows that not only does and the case studies are all out there for VR about how effective it is when you actually get to experience something, just as far as how most people interpret learning and retention. But it really showed out through VR that we were able to kind of create this. And so really feeling like it unlocked a new opportunity for how we think about training and really having people be aware of what's going on to a hazard, again, without them having to be exposed to it in real time, right? So
yeah, that's a pretty dynamic solution for what's really one of the more consistent issues historically facing construction job sites, just being job site safety that impacts everybody. So Cutler, how have you guys gotten buy-in beyond that of just the Haskell people, or have you within your ecosystem with subs, or are you guys on the cusp of doing that? How does that sit currently?
Yeah, so this has been a project that's been in the works for quite some time. So we're through our third iteration of it. So we're on a kind of the third generation of Hero. So obviously everything improves with that, right? And including the look and feel of it, making it as real as possible, right? And so we've gone through several iterations of it. Along with that, we've gone through several iterations of how we integrate this within our enterprise and within our safety training and within our field teams too. And so that's been the most interesting thing. We have started exposing it to the broader ecosystem of our trade partners as well on the site. So what we're doing right now is we have it dynamically positioned to where we have dedicated safety and quality teams. And this is kind of part of their part of their regular touch base with all the projects as they're going around. So they're kind of dynamically placed all across the globe on our kind of major areas where we're operating today. And they'll essentially administer the training in the field in real time. So there's an analytics backend that is able to kind of aggregate who's taken the training, what the scores were, et cetera. So there's kind of records and understanding of who maybe where there's areas for opportunity for improvement or enhancing ability, and just some kind of refresh. So they're able to do that on the spot and on the fly, which is neat. And so they're armed with the headsets today. We're working through now formalizing a partnership with a large training and content provider in the industry where we will be able to distribute the content through their system. And so they'll essentially be able to queue it up on a headset kind of there locally wherever they are. So, and again, the untethered nature of some of the new hardware is really helped as well. So you don't necessarily have to have a computer there. It's all self-contained, again, on a headset that is hands-free, just needs to be charged. And you can essentially do this on a job site trailer or, in a safe location on a project. Doesn't have to be a controlled office environment anymore, which is pretty cool too. So
we've make it easy. People actually use it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've taken it to some external parties and again, received lots of positive feedback. One of the most common things is, well, can I create my own job site in this? So this is like my project, right? And so the short answer is yes. The longer answer is there's a lot involved there, right? And so we're the venture and innovation team. We're kind of scrappy about how we developed this to begin with, working with some other industry partners and some universities to have some students work on this project as well when we're first kind of getting it off the ground. And now we're working on how to, again, with a partner that will make this announcement at ERMI, which is really exciting, but to bring it to the broader marketplace so it's more accessible to anyone who so chooses. And they've got dedicated, support and access and ease to deploy it.
Yeah, it's a really cool thing. I love that you gave a little hook, like, we'll announce that at ERMI, so you still got to come. You can't just listen to the podcast. You got to show up. You got to be there to hear about it.
Absolutely.
But with that, Rose, I want to ask you, because it's such a cool thing, and we've talked about how there is technology out there. People are clamoring for that. There's kind of a need, and certainly what Cutler and his team is addressing, site safety, is very important. It's something that every project is going to have to deal with, right? Even the best run projects are constantly needing to improve on their standards there. So from your position, right, if there's all this technology coming in and we see challenges that are mitigated by technology, but there are sometimes new ones created by the technology. So how do you, as a carrier, through your lens, how do you look to engage with the market and really kind of, enhance and educate them in that landscape?
Well, Michael, it starts with looking at the partnership between an insurance company and their customers. And I know that sounds a little corny, but a lot of what we're doing stems from our motto of payer to partner. So it starts by understanding the landscape of technology and, of course, understanding construction, but also understanding how our individual customers manage those things. And risk management is too often just thought of as risk mitigation. So risk management is not just about giving away all the risk, right? Or buying insurance for it, or just otherwise shirking it away. Risk management is about figuring out what the risks are, what risks you want to keep, and what risks you want to give away. So there's an element of that and an art of that has to do with each company's risk tolerance, which is why some choose higher deductibles versus lower deductibles, et cetera. But what we're doing here, and what we've always done in risk engineering and now in our innovation group, is helping our customers evaluate, compared to their peers, compared to best practices, how they do want to manage their risk. It's not just about buy insurance for it and then you're done. There's an element of how we innovate and how we're doing things differently in construction that, as you said, represents new risks and mitigates other risks. So these two things are very, very closely tied together, innovation and risk management. And I'm not sure that that's something everybody's really wrapping their heads around quite yet, but it's the platform that I've been trying to get some attention around recently, because I came from risk management. So 20 years ago, risk management was this nebulous word. It was like, what is risk management? Isn't that just insurance? Do we need a risk manager? Maybe our CFO can do that. Maybe our legal counsel can do that. I don't know. Where should they sit? How many people do we need? That sounds like a lot of overhead. Why do we need this risk management thing, right? And little by little, over the last, let's call it 2 decades, we realized as a construction community that you need a risk manager. You often need to hold a risk management department. You need to integrate it into your entire business. And the ROI is relatively long tail. You're not going to see a return on that investment tomorrow. But over time, your claims are going to come down. Your losses are going to be more favorable. Your profitability is going to be involved in that equation. When you're making 2 to 5% fee on a job and the project manager walks off the job and goes, yeah, I saved a bunch of money. I finished the job early, on time, on budget, and safely. But then 3 years later, their claims develop and erode that entire fee. We're not going to be profitable as an industry. So we figured this out about risk management a long time ago. Now any company on the ENR top list has a risk manager, if not a whole department. We have best practices, we have conferences, we have peer groups, we generally know how to manage risk as a industry. I think innovation is in that same infancy that risk management was maybe 20 years ago. And we are just figuring out now, should I have a chief risk officer or a chief innovation officer? How many people should I have looking into technology? What technology should I adopt? What are my peers doing? All the same questions we were asking ourselves about risk management 20 years ago, we're now asking about innovation. What's the ROI on that? It's long tail. Innovating your business with the inclusion of technology as part of that is going to make you a more profitable contractor, is going to help you be competitive in the market, is going to help you protect those small profit margins that you have. So I guess what I'm coming around to is these are similar initiatives that have changed the landscape of construction, risk management, innovation, technology, the modernization of our industry, and they need to be tied together because innovation is creating opportunity for us, but it's also adding different risks, and we need to continue to evaluate that. So for me, what I'm seeing is the rise of the innovation leader. And what I'm trying to encourage our contractors to do is have those innovation leaders be talking to their risk managers in their own companies and figuring out how those two things interact together to really bolster a company's growth opportunities, their strength in the market, and their competitive edge.
Yeah, I guess I was building on something you said earlier, getting out of that kind of historic mindset of being an industry slow to adopt to really now just skyrocketing up that learning curve for innovation. I guess that really shines a light on why it's so important to adopt some of the more complex and scarier technologies as opposed to just the table stakes stuff you talked about. Is that, do you guys kind of see it the same way? Like if you're benchmarking yourself against other GCs, getting out of that mindset of a historically slow to adopt industry and into the mindset of let's go, it's time. This is the mindset we need to adopt. Is that, are you seeing that being more prevalent now and driving, I guess, acceptance and use of some of those technologies?
Yes, and I would say the most important aspect of that is having an innovation leader, not a tech leader, because innovation is meant to fail fast and move on, which, by the way, is not how risk thinks. Risk, right? Risk is more protective. Risk is more conservative by nature. And so it's a great balance because innovation leaders are meant to take risks and they're meant to fail at things because they can only figure out what's right by failing at some things before that. But if you only have a technology leader and all they're interested in is technology, that's like having an insurance manager without having a risk manager. It's just one piece of it. So having the balance between having an innovation leader and having a risk leader, you've got one who's encouraged to try new things and fail fast, and you've got another that's kind of holding the reins, right? And I think that balance is super important. Shameless plug here. I've been talking for a while about the fact that I think that construction companies need a chief risk officer. A lot have VPs of risk management directors, and other assorted titles that are N-1 or greater, right? They're not reporting directly to the CEO, but they're reporting to the C-suite, but not the CEO. So they're not sitting at that table. I've been saying that for years. I'm also going to say that I think that we need chief innovation officers, because when those two people sit at the C-suite table with the CFO and the COO and the chief marketing officer and the chief revenue officer, or whatever you have in your C-suite there, then those two things are really baked into the strategy and the fabric of the company. But if they still report through another channel, their influence is a bit watered down. So those are my hairy, scary, like kind of BHAG thoughts on how to manage the leadership between those two, and then how they should fit together and be working with the rest of the C-suite.
I'd agree. I think you're definitely onto something, and your analogies there are good, Rose. And saying that there is, and I'm seeing this internally with my organization as well. Unfortunately, we do have a robust risk management function, which is awesome, and they're a great team that we get to work with on a regular basis. But finding that they are a good avenue to push some technologies through to just drive awareness of the simple things that can be done, and the value add and how to de-risk using technology, which is also interesting. But the innovative part, that's the exciting piece, but it's also the hard part. But to your point, you need the buy-in and you need the commitment there, because this is a journey. It's taken in stride, and it's not just finding necessarily something that works really well, but it's also then you have to maybe break some workflows internally to get it to where it needs to be, really to provide the true value to the organization. So there's all sorts of hits you kind of take along the way, but I agree with the alignment and the importance for it is definitely like mission critical. So a tough case that always comes up is what you mentioned also, Rose, around ROI, right? So, you roll it up to the most simple, what's the ROI of saving one life, right? So, and then everything else kind of boils down. So it sounds a little cliche, but it's true, right? It's still a very dangerous industry. And so if you can avoid those injuries, and if you can avoid that rework and those problems that don't happen, that eventually starts to snowball and provide real value to your organization, and kind of puts you in a totally different playing field, right? So
Agree. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's awesome. It's great to get both of your individual perspectives there, sitting in the different seats that you do. And I think also one that's going to appeal to pretty much our entire audience and be of great value to everybody who listens. Typically, we like to also give our audience 3 takeaways, and given our conversation today, what do you think those would be? Cutler, I guess I'd start with you.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of, major takeaways would be you need to embrace the change, and that's something that historically industries maybe not been the best at. So, kind of embrace where you are and understand that the change is part of it, and the growth that comes with that won't always be painless. And so that's kind of part of it. Other things would be, the cost of inaction and not dedicating function, time, or resources to evaluating the impacts of where the industry is going is much greater than just doing it. So you mindfully need to consider that in the equation. And then kind of the last part is, Rose, you've hit on a couple times, but just around the innovation piece, just know it's a journey, and fail often, fail fast, but get back up and keep rolling, and just stay the course with it, because there's inherent growing pains that come with it, but it's a journey. So
how about you, Rose? Same general takeaways, or you got anything to add there?
Yeah, I love what Cutler said about the cost of inaction. The cost of inaction may be greater than the cost of failure. I mean, that's not the way we think as contractors typically, right? We are risk adverse. We have slim profit margins, and most of the C-suite of a construction company got there by rinsing and repeating successful, the way that they're really good at building buildings. A lot of them come from engineering. Not to knock engineering, I'm a recovering engineer myself, but we get there by finding a process and rinsing and repeating it and doing it really, really well. Most of the C-suite at a contractor has gotten there by building buildings and being a leader really, really well. They have not gotten there by trying new things and failing. That's just traditionally not how it's done. So we really have to challenge that status quo, and having an innovation leader whose job it is to do that is super important, as we mentioned before, but also having the mindset and the strategy at that table, because if you only got one person advocating for innovation, then that person's going to stand alone. So aligning your strategy, both your risk strategy, your business strategy, and your innovation strategy together, and having the full suite of support for that is the only way to be successful in this.
Love it. I love it. And additionally, with the takeaways, we do like to have an action item, right? So if I'm listening today, if I haven't quite yet gotten to ERMI, or I'm listening after ERMI, whatever it may be, if I want to start this process, if I'm looking at this conversation going, okay, my organization needs to make a change here, what's my first step? It can feel daunting, but what's that first realization, the first acknowledgement and step towards this path? I guess maybe I would defer to Cutler. I'm the innovator of the room. What would you do as the innovator in that situation?
Yeah, no, for sure. I would say first thing is address the hard questions. So say, where's there opportunity for me to help improve my organization, and what can I do? And what is an action in my control? And even if it's just starting somewhere small, reaching out to a company that you think is interesting, or that you've heard good things about, or that you feel could be beneficial, talking with them. And, even if you don't have necessarily dedicated budget or any approval for this, but just kind of exploring early on, saying, hey, can you help me out? Or how do I go ahead and, maybe can I get a trial of XYZ or whatnot, something like that. Just again, kind of taking that first step, with some targeted direction and a little bit of plan. But that starts by asking the question and by just taking the first step. So
excellent.
A great place to start would be starting with the problem. Like Cutler said, there's a lot of shiny, blinky technology out there, and it's easy to get distracted and go down rabbit holes and be like, oh, look how cool this is. But you got to distinguish the difference between shiny and cool and really practical and useful. So starting with the problem is always a good place to get it to jump in.
That's excellent. Yeah. And so that brings us to the end of our show here today. So I know, Rose, you've been on here before and maybe you're familiar, but Cutler, this is the Building Bite. That's building insurance technology with the experts. You are today's expert. So we'd like to ask you guys, what are you taking a bite out of today? Rose, maybe something out in California, or Cutler, something in Jacksonville?
It's like a literal bite.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Where's your number one spot, Rose? Where are you going for lunch today?
There's an Asian fusion restaurant called 10 that's local to me. I've only lived here for a few months, so that's my local favorite spot. I like Asian fusion.
Excellent. Cutler, what about you?
I'm gonna hit you with some down south barbecue. It's North Florida, so we still qualify as the South here as far as I'm concerned. And so there's a great local spot. They've got about five locations called Mojo Barbecue, and it's phenomenal. So if you're ever in town, definitely track me down. Love to take somebody out to some good barbecue.
Absolutely, yeah. Full disclosure, Mike just keeps a list of these so that when we're traveling, we know where to hit up. Well, Cutler, Rose, thank you guys for chatting with us today. We certainly appreciate the time. If our listeners want to hook up with you before ERMI, where can they find you? Rose, I'll start with you.
I'm on LinkedIn, and my email is rose.hall@axaxl.com.
And Cutler, how about yourself?
Awesome. Yeah, same. LinkedIn. My the messages on there is getting a little bit overwhelming at times, so I gotta dig myself out of that at some point. But you can also send me an email at cutler.knupp@haskell.com. So would love to connect with anybody that's listening and interested to learn a little bit more, or whatever we can assist with. So
fantastic.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you both again. Again, we definitely appreciate the time, and look forward to seeing you guys in November.
Can't wait.
Sounds good.
See you in Vegas.
Thanks all.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Building Bite. This podcast has been brought to you by Proactive. Check us out on thebuildingbite.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter and follow us on social media for all future The Building Bite news and updates. You can also find us on your favorite apps, including Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Amazon. If you have ideas for episode topics that we should cover on the show, or you know somebody who would be a perfect guest, let us know at connect@thebuildingbite.com.